everybody, and welcome to our live chat with Peter Diamandis, the founder of the XPRIZE, co-founder of Singularity University, space entrepreneur, engineer, author of the book Abundance, which was a bestseller, and author of a forthcoming book called Bold. I'm Gabriella Stern. I'm the deputy digital editor of the Wall Street Journal. And I'm also one of the editors involved in WSJ Startup of the Year. Peter is one of our mentors, and we're delighted to have him here today on this interactive chat. Peter, thanks for being with us.
Gabby, a pleasure.
So we're going to launch right in and put our first questioner on camera. It's Austin Bone from the startup Snaps, which is one of the contenders for WSJ Startup of the Year. There you are, Austin. Would you like to ask Peter your question?
Hi, Peter. Hi. Thanks, Gabriella. Peter, I'm just going to get started and ask my question. It's, do you predict a plateau of the social space evolution? If so, and what might cause it, and how would you advise companies like Facebook to anticipate and prepare for it?
Actually, I don't predict a plateau at all. I think we're gonna see explosions in dimensions we haven't seen yet. So what do I mean by that? First of all, social media today is very much mostly a text and type conversation that goes back and forth. Some people, like we're doing right now, engage in video, which is, adequate, right? I mean, we've got 3 little boxes on our screen right now. We're not really getting much other cues. But what's coming online over the next 10 years that people are not even conceiving of, the sort of stuff that we teach at Singularity University, the kind of stuff I'm writing about in Bold, is a whole new set of tools and dimensions. So for example, my friend Philip Rosedale, who was the founder of Second Life, is creating the next generation of high fidelity virtual worlds. So what happens when you can enter a virtual world and truly, really have an experience that is almost as good or better than what you see in Avatar? What's social media going to be like there? What happens when you're able to put on fully immersive headsets? What happens when you start to use telepresence robotics, where social media means that you have a physical manifestation in locations around the world that you can hop into, hop out of, like my friend Scott Hassan does with his Beam robot. I also think we're going to start to have a level of AI coming on top of social media, which really can help be your guide of how to interact with people in a deeper, meaningful way. Not to mention at all, I haven't even gotten into the conversation about brain-computer interface and what happens on the intimacy when I can actually plug in and start to connect with you on that kind of a level. So I think that if technology stopped right now and didn't move any further forward, sure, we'll plateau. But the fact of the matter is we are social beings. And all the technology we're creating is going to be creating new, deeper, richer, much more vibrant, much more experiential mechanisms for social media to ride on top of. So that's my answer for you.
Great answer.
Any follow-ups, Austin?
No, I totally agree. And I think that I'm just personally excited to see how technology and humanity evolve as a social culture. So super excited about that. And thank you for your answer.
Best of luck with your project, with your company.
Thanks, Austin. I'm going to ask you a question from one of our other entrepreneurs, Sue Sani from We Did It. He asks about Singularity, and I see we have Vivek Wadhwa, another Singularity VIP on this, observing this call. Peter, you're, of course, the co-founder of Singularity with Ray Kurzweil. And Sue Sani asks, how are mainstream academic institutions going to benefit, or how are they already benefiting from sharing and teaching the content, the exponential technologies related content coming out of Singularity University?
Sure. So let me take a second and use that as a opportunity to speak about SU. Vivek is part of our amazing faculty and core team. We have, I'm sure, a large number of alumni and students online with us. Ray Kurzweil and I co-founded the university 5 years ago. Actually, we're celebrating our 5th anniversary, and in exponential time, I think that's pretty far down the line. And we noted that at the end of the day, when you go to MIT or Stanford or Harvard or Supiro or University of Moscow, whatever it might be, and you go and you get your PhD degree, today when you get that kind of a diploma, you end up really focusing on a very narrow niche, right? You become the world's expert in a sequence of DNA in a particular gene in a particular bacterium, and that's the expertise that you have. And that's important for moving things forward. And you're a geek in a very narrow niche, and you need typically a PhD to understand someone else's PhD thesis title. So what we wanted to do was, in fact, flip that model and say we want to create a place where we are teaching the top graduate students and the top executives around the world about the most powerful exponentially growing technologies and how these are converging, and how you as an entrepreneur or you as an executive can use this to solve your company's grand challenges, the world's grand challenges. So we focus on computational systems, what my friends at Autodesk call infinite computing, networks and sensors, what my friends at Cisco call Internet of Everything or Internet of Things, AI, robotics, synthetic biology, 3D printing, digital medicine, energy systems. So we focus on these, which are the ones that are riding on the back of Moore's law, and we change the way people think about, stop thinking linearly and locally and start thinking exponentially and globally. And I think the most important thing that SU is doing is getting this meme out there. So if you're a graduate student watching this program, I highly commend to you, go to singularityU.org. We are taking applications for the Graduate Studies Program 2014 for next summer. It opens up next week, I think, or in 2 weeks' time. So go to that website, put in your name so you can come. If you're an executive or a young entrepreneur, come to our executive programs. It has been said it's the best experience people have had. We'll change the way you think. We'll give you amazing connections. We're beginning something called SU Labs, which has a massive incubator and a venture fund component. So mostly the benefit we can offer to universities, companies, incubators, whatever, is just a new way of thinking about how these exploding technologies are really the tools to take on the world's biggest problems.
Great, thank you. We're going to put Ioannis from Centellia on, another one of our startups.
Peter, thanks for coming on. Nice to meet you. My name is Yannis Verdelis. I'm founder of Sintelia, and we're making a software keyboard for smartphones that lets you type without looking. One of the things we do here is we try to balance radical innovation and research, things that we're researching that maybe don't yet have real practical application, but may do in a year or two, with the bread and butter that we obviously have to focus on as a startup. In your experience, what are some great ways that a startup can balance continuing to innovate and research versus focusing on the immediate future and making sure that we have real commercial opportunities with opportunities that exist today?
So Yannis, that's a great question and a pleasure to speak to a fellow countryman. For those of you watching, we're both Greek, so I'll leave it at that. The balance is really an important one. So when I coach the SU startups, and what I'm writing about in my next book, Bold, is the notion that your long-term vision of where you're going as a company should be driven by two things. It should be driven by your personal passion, because doing anything big and bold in the world is really hard, and unless you're absolutely passionate about it, you're going to give up before you get there. The second thing it should be driven by is what I call really 10x, moonshot, bold, big and bold thinking, whatever it might be. It's like, are you taking on a grand challenge? Are you taking on something that's really big and bold? I was just with Mark Andreessen, the founder of Mosaic, who I was interviewing for my next book, Bold. And Mark was saying at Andreessen Horowitz, his company, he doesn't look at a company that doesn't have a potential to being over $100 million revenue business. And so I think if you're going to invest huge amount of time in something you're excited about, does it have legs? Does it have the ability to grow? And can you connect it to a big and bold vision that will give you the growth potential? Because people buy into a company with their heart. They love the boldness of your vision. We're going to solve this grand challenge. On the flip side, it is doing stuff in the near term that has revenue. It is attacking it like Eric Ries talks about in Lean, where you're gonna iterate, you're gonna try, you're gonna move forward. And while you might have the big bold vision at the end of the exponential that you have going up, what you really want in the beginning is something real, tangible that you can test with your consumers and get going. And I think it's important for you to take on revenue that is aligned with that alignment. In other words, going and doing stuff to make money that's orthogonal to your either near-term or long-term vision is not something I recommend. So, I have this company, Planetary Resources, that I co-founded for asteroid mining, and we have amazing backers. And we have an amazing group of 35, 40 engineers up in Bellevue, Washington. And there's lots of business that team could take on as on our road to asteroid mining, but we will sometimes take on business, research grants, whatever, if it's directly in line with what we're doing. So we took a research grant from, I think it was NASA or DARPA, on laser communications, because we needed to develop laser communications anyway for when that spacecraft is 100 million miles away from the Earth and we're communicating back via laser. So that was something we need to do, so we took on that contract. But it needs to be, the near-term work that you do needs to be aligned with your passion, because if you start doing work that's not in your heart, you're starting to deviate. And it needs to be aligned with your long-term vision of your company, which also should be aligned with your personal passion. I hope that's somewhat useful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes.
We're going to try Yuri Molina. He's with SwipeSense in Evanston, Illinois, one of our WSJ Startup of the Year contenders also. Here he is.
Wonderful. Hi there, Peter. My question is, as technology continues to seep into kind of different segments in the vertical market, and we see huge jobs being lost to technology progress, do you think that structural unemployment is going to be a significant challenge for us going forwards? And if it is, given that there's not going to be a technological solution to structural unemployment, what are kind of changes to societal, governmental, these kind of big institutions that will have to be made to account for this challenge?
So it's a great question, and it's one that I think about a lot. And as you can imagine, I go out and I speak to tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people per year, and that's probably one of the most frequently asked questions, not in the language and precision that you asked it, which was really strong, but just generally, dude, what's going to happen with jobs out there? There are three different elements, right? Three different scenarios here. Scenario number one is, like we have with technology time and time again, we're going to be creating new jobs that technology will displace the jobs at the lower rung of the skill ladder, and we're creating jobs at the higher rung of the skill ladder. So I do believe that is going to happen. But if you paint the picture going forward, that we're going to have really massively powerful robots and highly, intelligent AI, and that there's no job that an AI or a robot can't do, which I think we are going to head that way. I think that over the next 20 years, we're going to start to see AI coming on, which is indistinguishable from the human expert and robotics that can pretty much do anything we want to do 24/7. Without going on strike, without having unions, without having sick, without having a boyfriend and girlfriend problem, all those things. So that is going to cause an issue. So there's two scenarios that come out of that option. Scenario number one is that we co-evolve with technology, where we have been. As humans, we've been evolving with technology for hundreds of years, right? When I hop on the 405 here, not during rush hour, but I'm traveling 60 miles an hour, the human body was not created to travel 60 miles an hour. But we, in partnership with technology, I'm moving now 60 miles an hour, and I'm now with technology transmitting my voice and image to thousands of people. So we're going to start to partner with technology so that you, the human, plus the technology, are now doing new kinds of jobs that you could never do before. So that's option one. Option two is that we enter a form of technological socialism, and I'm a libertarian capitalist. I love capitalism. I've started 15 companies. I love that process. And the idea of socialism, I have zero political interest in this. But technological socialism is a point at which computers and technology are basically giving us our stuff for free. They're giving us free healthcare, free education. They are creating the products and services we need. And I do think that the end state, we're heading in that kind of a direction. So the question then becomes, what do we do with our time? And I think that's the interesting question. I think there's lots of business opportunities that entrepreneurs can be thinking about when your basic needs are being met. What does a person do with their time? So, for example, I mentioned Philip Rosedale earlier, who founded Second Life, and I don't want to discuss his new company. He can do that when he's ready. But I think that we're going to have a lot of time where people are going to be entering and exploring virtual worlds. I think my friend Salim Ismail talks about occupation having a new meaning. Occupation today, what's your occupation, is how do you occupy your time to make money? But there's going to be an alternate meaning of how do you occupy your time to be significant or to have fun. So the nature of occupation may change, where you may be at the end result spending your time exploring virtual worlds, becoming a researcher through virtual telepresence on Mars or on the moons of Europa. I don't know, but these are the kinds of things that we're thinking about. And there's a great book that an SU alumni, Federico, wrote called Robots Will Steal Your Job, and That's Okay, in which he explores a lot of these ideas. But I'll tell you one thing, on the road to abundance, there will be turbulence and there will be change, but we are moving towards a world where the basic needs of every man, woman, and child will be met. So I hope you'll be discovering some fun answers to that question too. And if you do, share them with me.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Yuri. Peter, when you were talking about how people will spend time, before we go to the next question, I'm wondering, we have a generation of boys and young men who are spending a ton of time on video games, and some of the video games are fabulous. I mean, they're artistic, they're beautiful, they're incredibly creative, etc. But it is occupying a lot of time. Do you have a view on this sort of incredible obsession that so many people have with video games, and whether it's a quote-unquote waste of time or how to make it a good use of your time?
So, I was a video game junkie, but it was it was when video games were Space Invaders and on from there. So it's changed a lot since then. And I've got a great friend of mine, Richard Garriott. Richard grew up in Houston because his dad was an astronaut, and he never went to college because while he was in high school, he started designing video games and started making more money than his parents did. And he ended up, he's known as Lord British. He ended up creating Ultima 1 through 9 and a multitude of different games, made enough money in the video game industry to ultimately buy a ticket to the space station, which one of my companies that Richard is an investor and a vice chairman along with me of, called Space Adventures, takes people to the space station for, like, I think the last ticket we sold was $54 million for 10 days in the space station. So there's a lot of money to be made there and a lot of enjoyment. I think that the neurological elements of video gaming are things that we are starting to see used in learning and in gamification. And I do think that one can see, there's a whole art, and I teach this. Those of you who don't know my blog, it's diamandis.com. You can sign up, and I put out weekly interviews with CEOs that I do, and I talk about exponential organizational tools, and one of them is called gamification. And so if you can make your problem that you have fun for someone else to solve, then you can get lots of people working for you for free just for the enjoyment. How do you flip your problem? It's the old Huckleberry Finn, of I'm being paid to paint the fence, and if I make the other person want to do it for me, I get to sit back and relax. There's a whole art of gamification, and a number of the interviews and the teachings I do in that world. Of course, XPRIZE is another massive gamification, right? It's getting the world to solve your problem of space. My problem was spaceflight. I got people 26 teams spent $100 million to help eventually get my ticket to space. So video games are a version of a whole spectrum of stuff going on. So we'll see. Will video games become the way that people learn? Will video games become the way that people improve their health? Will it become the way that people add value and utility and data mining to the world? We'll find out.
Thanks. I have a follow-up question later on, but we're going to put EAS Technologies on to ask you a question. They're one of the startups contending for WSJ Startup of the Year. They're based out in Colorado. Go ahead, Stephen.
Hi, Peter. I'm Stephen Ambrose, founder of EAS Technologies, and together with Stevie Wonder, Steve Libacek and I are making technology that harvests the pressures that normally cause hearing loss in the devices that we're using today, and allows lower volumes to sound louder. So in addition to doing that, this is an inflatable membrane that causes better isolation than even the big earmuffs with the custom earplugs on top of them or underneath them that the naval aircraft carrier operators wear. So my question is, in your experience with the various new commercial approaches to spaceflight, considering the significant noise levels generated by different thrust platforms employed for reaching escape or orbit velocities, what noise volumes and durations are space vehicle occupants ordinarily subjected to, and what are the current methods utilized for comfortably protecting their hearing?
So, I did a medical degree and did some work in space medicine, but I bolted before I went and did any kind of internship or residency. So I'm not necessarily the best one to ask about that. What I can tell you is that that the vehicle that could have really used that was the space shuttle, which is now retired. The shuttle had two types of engines: the shuttle main engines, which burned hydrogen and oxygen, which were relatively smooth and, I don't call it quiet, but quieter. And then the large solid rocket boosters that were solid engines that had a very spread spectrum, very loud rumbling, which made it a very rough ride. Companies, vehicles like Soyuz and vehicles like Falcon 9 are in fact liquid engines, but so they're going to be on the quieter side. So I think that, but really the market there today is still small. I think the opportunity remains in even the aviation side of the equation, where people are on airplanes with babies screaming and engines rumbling and flight attendants chatting. So I could use your technology on airplanes, and I think there are tens of millions who could too.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Thanks, Steve. Pleasure. So my follow-up question, Peter, is I was researching you this weekend. We met in the springtime at the Singularity event at Fox, but I thought, well, let me make sure I remember everything there is to know about Peter. And I just started thinking about you and your life and the XPRIZE and the large sums of money that you have to generate in order to offer, highly lucrative prizes to solve the biggest problems and opportunities that there are. Do you enjoy the fundraising aspect of this? Does it become tiresome? Would you rather be doing science or thought leadership? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so raising money is an important question for everybody watching, and let me use that as a jumping point to talking about philosophy about fundraising, how to do it, what I've done. And I've been raising money all of my life, and honestly, I have a few ventures which I hope will yield multi-billion-dollar returns for me. And if I have that money, I'll be investing it heavily in the companies like those on here, or in opening up space and the things that I'm passionate about. But until then, because the companies I've started, I've sold a couple, but mostly they're illiquid, I have to go and raise capital. And when I think about raising money, I think about money as an energy source. It's a means to an end, and my goal is to convince a few wealthy individuals, or a large number of medium wealthy individuals, or a larger number of less wealthy individuals who back the vision, the company, the idea that I have, whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit, to back it, to make it happen. And it's the same thing for all of us. But even, people like, some of the top companies, whether it's Richard Branson's companies or Elon Musk's or whomever's, they are still going and bringing in money from other sources. So it's not just their risk, but because bringing in money from other sources makes you smarter, makes you use that capital more intentionally and more powerfully than just using your own money. So most people don't fund everything out of their own pocket, no matter how wealthy you are. So I am always looking for, so first of all, when I'm looking to raise money, I am always raising money for something that I'm passionate about. If I'm not absolutely passionate about that subject, I can't raise money for it. So if there was an XPRIZE that we wanted to launch that I didn't see and I didn't get, I'm not gonna push it forward. When I went out to raise capital with Eric Anderson on planetary resources, that's something which I completely know is doable, is going to make a huge impact for humanity, and is something that the time has come. And so we were able to raise a significant amount of capital from very wealthy individuals. So I get, I think I don't necessarily enjoy the process. I enjoy talking to people about my companies or my projects and getting the feedback. And every conversation I have with someone, I'm refining my pitch. And one sort of small lesson I'll offer to people on the phone, on the video conference here, is that when you're pitching someone for money, the chances are the majority of folks are going to say no. So be prepared for that, right? But when they say no, do not walk away and be done with that. Your job is to extract some value from that conversation you've had with somebody. Your job is to at least ask them, well, please, you've said no, I accept that. Give me honest feedback. How could I have improved my presentation? Or what would I had to have done for you to have invested in? Or who do you think would be interested? If you can take away some, or do you have resources or services that you can provide for me in kind that I can utilize? There's some benefit, because every time you do that, you get an incremental small amount of benefit, you gain the ability to increase your credibility and increase the probability that the next person is going to say yes. Having said all that, there is magic right now going on in the form of raising capital, and that's in the crowdfunding arena, right? In 2012, there were 530 crowdfunding sites, the largest of which, Indiegogo, Kickstarter, Rocket Hub, I'm sure you all know about, and there was some $2.8 billion raised last year. By 2015, that number is going to grow to $15 billion. So I've been studying a lot of this, of the best techniques and approaches for raising money, for crowdfunding. Those of you who are interested, if you sign up for my blog at diamandis.com, or I'm going to be running a 2-day program here in LA on January 9th and 10th called Abundance 360 Summit. So if you go to abundance360summit.com, you can get more information about it. But everybody here should be running some kind of a crowdfunding campaign. If you don't know how to do it and you come to the summit, I'll teach you. You go to my blogs, I teach you there as well. But ultimately, this is the value of crowdfunding is not in the cash alone. That's great, interesting, valuable, but it's in creating a passionate community who are following you, supporting you. It's about finding out which of your products or services people really want and what variant of them they really want. This is people putting on real money down on the table, because you can do all the surveys you want, but when it comes down for someone to actually put down $25 or $100, it changes the way they truly think about it. So I think everybody should be at least doing an experiment in this arena. So I guess I don't love raising money. I love getting people's confidence and transferring their excitement, or transferring this excitement between my passion about this new project or company and them, and getting them involved. I love helping people make their dreams come true. Sometimes it's through my projects. Sometimes it's through me supporting their projects.
Thank you. We have a question from a user named Paisano. I'm going to, he or she asks, what do you think of the government's thinking about abundance? And you did testify before, I guess, the House Science Committee. Do you feel that, do you feel that the government's way of thinking is too narrow, and that they're not thinking right about this incredible era we're in, which you've described as an era of abundance? And how do we help change the government's way of thinking?
So it's a many-part question, and the government, unfortunately, isn't one beast. It's a multitude of different organizations and people and approaches and thoughts. So I think that first of all, to put perspective, I talk about this in abundance, but if you think about people below the poverty line in the United States, today people below the poverty line are wealthier than the kings and queens of 100, the kings, queens, and presidents of 100 years ago, 150 years ago. If you think about the fact that people under the poverty line have access to electricity, running water, toilets, air conditioning, cell phones, cars, televisions, levels of entertainment, levels of capabilities that you could have had all the money in the world, you could not have had this 100, 150 years ago. So, we have to talk about how we define abundance. I define abundance not as luxury, but possibility. I define it as having your basic needs met. So I think that part of the fundamentals of abundance include energy, access to clean water, access to food, access to healthcare, and access to education, or learning, I should say. Today, I believe that I'll take the last two, learning / education and healthcare, are massively screwed up. I think it's a technical term. And we have the potential, using the technologies coming online right now. So at XPRIZE, for example, we have two ongoing competitions. We have something called the Qualcomm Tricorder XPRIZE, and something called the Nokia Sensing X Challenge. And those two competitions are going to create an explosion in technology that will take the cost of healthcare down massively. Now, the challenge is that it's going to disrupt a lot of multi-billion-dollar healthcare companies that employ people and that are in congressional districts. And my biggest concern is that the unions and those companies will try and block some of these technologies from coming online, because it's going to, cause disruption in the tax base and a lot of these things. So think about this. Today, if I were to ask you, how monitored you are, or anybody here is, in their bodies, very few, unless you're wearing a health bit, have any kind of monitoring. I drive a Tesla Model S, which I love, commend to all of you, and a SR-22 Cirrus airplane, and both of those have hundreds of sensors monitoring, with hundreds of microprocessors monitoring every aspect of vibration and heat and temp and flows and all of that, battery levels. But your refrigerator has got more monitoring than I have on me right now. And that's going to change. We're entering a world where all of us are going to be fully monitored biologically, from things like the tricorder, things coming out of the Nokia Sensing X Challenge, and to the point where we're going to be monitored. We're going to have an AI that is watching what we're doing, and it may actually change what we eat through the day. It will make medicine prospective, proactive, preventive, rather than retrospective and reactive, which it is today. And it's going to make the medical experience far different than it is. So I talked to Peggy Hamburg, the commissioner of the FDA, and I talk about, when my iPhone or my Android phone, my Samsung Note becomes my doctor, Are you going to regulate it? And the answer is we have to. And the challenge becomes then, if the government starts regulating this device, then these devices will come to market last in the United States and will come to market first in places like Africa, which don't have regulatory oversight like that. And so just like Africa skipped a generation, the telecom industry, and has, in some cases, a better cell phone network, or has mobile banking that we don't even use here in the United States because it's a necessity there, we're going to start to see some interesting shifts that occur in the global dynamic. I'll give one other example. Back under Bush 43 administration, when we made stem cell research from embryos illegal here, putting aside the ethical issue, which is a big issue to put aside, but the notion that we're going to make something illegal in the United States doesn't mean it's going to stop around the world. All that means is that the best scientists and best technologies leave the U.S. and go to China, South Korea, India, wherever a case might be, because
well, in that case, they went to the UK and Singapore, I think, right?
And U.S. went from being number 1 in stem cell research to number 8.
Mm-hmm.
And so that will happen over and over again. You can't regulate against this technology. It just, it's a false concept.
We have a question from Matt Rubenstein, who is with Live School, an education technology firm that's part of Startup of the Year. He asks, do you envision a future of one-to-one student interaction with technology, a future of teacher efficiency and efficacy augmented by technology, or both?
So the answer is, Matthew, absolutely. I imagine a world in which our educational, our learning systems are going to be massively different from they are today. Very, very different. We have folks like Udacity at Sebastian Thun has created. We have Coursera. We have obviously Khan Academy. And this is just the beginning. Just the beginning. We're getting ready to, we're in the middle of designing and completing the funding here at the XPRIZE for a global literacy XPRIZE, a learning XPRIZE, which would be a competition to teach people how to learn, how to read, maybe how to code in parts of the world that have no teachers and no schools. Today there are 880 million illiterate people on the planet. 80 million of those are kids. We can't build enough schools or teach enough teachers. And when we do build schools in parts of the developing world, the teachers there basically have a small incremental improvement over what the students have. I think that technology, we go back, Gabby, to your question about video game, the same kind of technology that makes games addictive and fun can make learning compelling and exciting and personalized. I do believe that we are well within 5 to 10 year time frame of having an AI that will be available to any student with a tablet or a smartphone. That AI will be able to understand that students' language skills, what their favorite actor is, their favorite sports star, their favorite colors, and can give them a personalized learning experience that is unlike anything today. In fact, the same way that I think about a Maasai warrior in the middle of Kenya on a smartphone with access to Google has access to the same research and information on that smartphone on Google in Kenya that Larry Page does to Google in Mountain View. It's the same because it's a platform equivalent to everybody. And so in the future, the kinds of learning platforms we're going to go to are going to offer the poorest of the poor around the world the same level of learning capability that the wealthiest billionaire's kid has in Manhattan. That's where we're heading. It's a complete democratization, a demonetization, a dematerialization of the educational system, which is being held back today by unions and all kinds of things. But the fact of the matter is teachers are critically important and of value, but they should be guides, and AIs can be their partners, just like the Qualcomm Tricorder XPRIZE is going to be the partner for physicians instead of necessarily replacing them, because we can't teach enough teachers. We can't teach and train enough physicians either. to get us to that world of abundance. Technology is going to do that for us, allow us to scale.
What's your thought on Minerva Academy? That's gotten a lot of publicity lately. We at the Journal did an interview with Ben Nelson about a week ago. Are you
I'm sorry, for which academy?
Minerva Academy and other alternative secondary, post-secondary institutions that are trying to come up with a new form of university setting and structure?
So I'm not enough, I mean, I've heard, but don't know the details enough to comment. What I do believe is that we are going to have a lot of experimentation, and ultimately are going to fundamentally change the learning experience from the beginning to the highest levels. My friend Sebastian Thrud made a really insightful comment for me when I was interviewing for my book Bold. And he said, you know, it used to be that 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, when you went and got an education at a university, you know, and universities now go back some 500-600 years, the current university as we think about it, based really early on the earliest days of religion, and then eventually moving into science and literacy and literature and so forth. But let's go back 150 years ago, 100 years ago. When you got an education, what you learned during those 4 years or 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it was pretty much what you would use the rest of your life. It served you for 50 years. Today, when you go to college, the best college, and get an education, you know, it's out of date the year after you leave. So the idea that you go someplace and get an education that you then sit back on your laurels and never do anything again is pathetic. So we're going to reinvent the entire learning process. I have, you know, two-year-old boys at home, and when, you know, I don't know if they'll go to college, you know. I started a college fund and saying, you know, I wonder how they're going to use this money, because it isn't, you know, as much as I loved MIT, right? Amazing experience. SU is a new kind of experiential learning. I'm doing this Abundance 360 Summit that I'm going to do this January, and I realized people have asked me, said, Peter, would you be willing to do this Abundance 360 Summit every year for a couple of days for the next 25 years? I'll come for 2 days in January every year for the next 25 years and, you know, be my guide. So I think people will come to SU for a lifetime. They'll join organizations, they'll join incubators, they'll join experiential learning, and learning will become something very different in the future. It's not going to be go for 4 years, maybe for socialization side, but not for learning.
I agree with you. We're going to bring Mitch Jackson on camera.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Gabby. Hi,
Hi.
Peter. Peter, absolutely love your material. What you just touched upon regarding the use of smartphones, you referenced during your TED presentation last year, how it's leveling the playing field, all of this information. What you just shared as a fellow dad with 2 kids and the college experience, my question to you is, those are my concerns. Things are changing so fast. I've been practicing law for about 30 years, and I've noticed how technology, how the information available on social has leveled the playing field. It's different as a professional now, okay? We're not holding all the cards. Clients have information. I think that's a really, really good thing. My question to you is, what do you see happening over the next 5 or 10 years with respect to professionals interacting with their clients, their patients? I'm talking doctors, lawyers, accountants, consultants. How is technology going to change and continue to improve the quality of interaction between professionals and their clients or patients? I think this is just a fascinating discussion. And thanks for having me on, Gabby.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Good question.
Yeah, Mitch, it's a great question. You know, I coach a lot of CEOs and executives, and it's really, we're in a very transformative time. I think that every aspect of every industry is going to be changing, and it's really a function of you and the fact that you're here tells me that you're already doing this as a professional, staying on top of it, because a lot of disruption is going to occur. The medical industry will become significantly disrupted. so will the legal industry. When AI is available to do most of your work for you, the question is, where will you, it's, to put it bluntly, back 150 years ago, we were an agrarian society here in the US. 66%, 2/3 of Americans made the food. Today, it's less than 2% because automation came in and transformed that. And the same thing is going to happen with a lot of the turnkey professions. And so the question becomes, where will you add value? How will you partner with an AI or with robotic systems? And where will you be adding value to individuals to help them understand things? I mean, I think what's going to happen is a lot of professions will become resistant, and they'll depend upon rules and laws to block this from happening. It used to be, for example, I remember when the first AI systems for reading an EKG for a physician came out, the cardiologist said, oh, no, we're not going to use this, or we're not going to accept this as a reading. A human has to read this thing. Until the first lawsuits started coming out saying, well, listen, the AI read it better and said this is happening, and you as the human made a mistake, and you should have been watching that. So there's going to be an interesting flip that occurs. I talk about this in the field of medicine, where today there's going to be a time in the future where we have companies like Intuitive Surgical who do robotic surgery. And there's going to be a time, right now the robots are assisting the surgeon in giving them augmented reality, giving them precision, magnification, allowing you to do some routine things. But there will be a point in the future where the conversation goes something like this. No, I do not want that human touching me. They could make a mistake. I want the robot doing the surgery, for God's sakes. And it may well be, I don't want the lawyer representing. I want the AI that won the last 975 cases representing me as well. So there's going to be an interesting flip that could occur there. Again, the road to abundance that I speak of is not a road of smooth. There's going to be turbulence, reorganization. As a lawyer, I mean, one of the big systems that's going to have to transform and change massively is the whole intellectual property system. Innovation is exploding and about to explode even further. 3 billion people coming online in the next 7 years, going from 2 billion to 5 billion people connected, all with cloud computing, 3D printing, Google and aspects. We're going to see a huge amount of innovation going on. And how do we deal with that? A lot of interesting opportunities for entrepreneurs, struggles for politicians.
But it sounds like your abundance approach, it creates more opportunities. It creates a better interaction between a professional and a client or a patient. I got a lot of pushback for a article I recently wrote about lawyers using Google Glass during the jury selection process of a jury trial. And I speculated a little bit about what might be used in Google Glass in the future, but live video feeds, facial recognitions, tapping into social platforms while I'm asking my jurors questions, having a live video feed from LA back to New York to my jury consultant who's giving me feedback about the individual sitting in seat number 3, and cross-referencing databases that I expect to be out at some point in the future that the courts will be offering. See, I look at it as a very exciting time, and when you talked about abundance during your TED speech, I shared that video with a lot of other lawyers because we have to look past what we're doing now and continue to improve on the process. And what you've been sharing, your message, I'm looking forward to your new book. I think it gives all of us a little bit of a roadmap and a new way of looking at things that it's going to make the next 10 years exciting. So thanks for having me on, you guys. I really appreciate, Peter, meeting you, and Gabby, thanks very much.
Thanks, Mitch.
Mitch, a pleasure. If you end up coming to our Abundance 360 Summit, that's exactly the kind of teaching that we're going to be doing, is the notion that if you're the kind of person who's a linear thinker who is effectively dependent on having learned a body of knowledge and then just having it carry you through the rest of your life, you're screwed. If you're lazy, you're basically done. If you are instead someone who's willing to stay on top of the technology and really realize how it's innovating, how it's changing, so you can be innovating and changing your life and seeing the opportunities and getting fulfillment out of actually giving the best value and impact to your clients and your customers by being their guide as well for technology, then it's exciting and fun, and you're going to love it. So I'll be teaching a lot of that. You come to Singularity University, the Abundance 360 Summit, or just reading my blogs. But that's where I get my juice. I get my fun from basically helping people see the world in a different way.
Mitch,
Well,
send me
Peter,
your
after
article.
20,
I'd
I
like
will,
to
but I was
read
going to
it.
say after 27 years of doing what I'm doing, this is what keeps things exciting. It's an exciting time, and I agree with you. That's what gets you up in the morning and to make a difference. And I'll do that, Gabby. Thanks for having me on, and I'm going to pass this along to my 18-year-old daughter who just finished her first year at UCLA. And so we've been
Oh,
having these conversations about, I want her doing her own thing. I don't want her to have to rely upon somebody else. And I want her to incorporate technology and everything that you and Gabby, you and Peter have been talking about during today's Spreecast into the next 50 years of her life. And that's the path to success, in my humble opinion. So thanks, you
good.
guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We're going to put Kevin Russell on.
Hey, Peter, I got to go out to the 2045 and do a short interview with you. And I'm still, I feel you were an antidote to any pessimism left in me. I use the moniker techno-optimist, and I use abundance to be a pragmatic optimist. A lot of people say it's naive in these times with all the pestilence and suffering, and it's true, but we have the ability, we have the minds that we can modulate against that. And I use optimism, and I use your book with abundance. And my question was, in these times of exponential growth and these new technologies, how important is it to get past what you called the amygdala pushers? These people that when it bleeds, it leads.
So a great question, and thank you for asking it. I spend a lot of time teaching and thinking about mindset, and it's an abundance mindset and a bold mindset, and there are two different elements that I teach and I blog about. First of all, the abundance mindset. Your community affects every aspect of your life, right? To use it very at a base level, if you're overweight and you want to lose weight, hang out with skinny people who are in health. Yeah. And that is the quickest way, because you will adopt that lifestyle. If you're lazy and you want to do well, hang out with a bunch of overachievers, and you will start to modulate and change and adopt their mechanisms. So your community, if you're below or above your community, you will end up coming to the norm. It's a well-known part of human psychology. Second thing is, who you surround yourself with and the conversations you surround yourself with affect your mindset. And so if you're watching negative news 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're going to be bummed out. And if you haven't read Abundance, if you haven't seen my TED Talk, please, one of the most important things I can tell you, the world is nowhere near as screwed up and messed up and negative as the news media would have you believe. The fact of the matter is the connectedness of our world basically allows, in high definition, living color, every murder, every negative thing on the planet to be broadcasted into your living room, into your CNN news feed. I get a news feed of some kid who murdered their parents is convicted in court in some small town, and it's coming up on my CNN news feed. I'm going, do I really need to know that? Is that really going to affect my life or my business? It doesn't. All it does is start putting negative thoughts into my mind. So the fact of the matter is, the news media, with due respect to our sponsors here at the Wall Street Journal, is in the business of getting the public's attention. And we evolved on the plains of Africa, where we had to pay tenfold at least more attention to the negative news than the positive news, because the negative news on the savannas and plains of Africa could kill you and take you out of the gene pool. And so we evolved a piece of our temporal lobe called the amygdala that pays visual and auditory attention to that. And it, the old adage, like you said, if it bleeds, it leads, really changes what we pay attention to. And so our politicians and our news media know that, and they use that, and they broadcast that. But the fact of the matter is, there's amazing stuff going on, but you don't hear about the scientific breakthroughs or the good deeds being done, because good news networks don't survive. We don't pay attention to that. And so I don't blame the news media. They're in a business to stay in business. and we're just neurologically structured and addicted to that sort of stuff. So mindset matters, and it's a matter of changing that. The other mindset is about willingness to do bold things in the world. Because if we hold ourselves back from doing those things, if you realize that you have the ability to take on a bold, big project, and this is what the subject of my new book is, and my blogs and so forth, you're now more empowered as an entrepreneur with the exponential technologies and exponential organizational tools of crowdfunding, of AI, of cloud computing, of 3D manufacturing, of on-demand workforce, of data mining, of incentive prizes. All of these things that I teach allow you to go and take on the world's grand challenges, and the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest market opportunities. You can become a billionaire and solve a billion people's problems in a beautifully aligned situation. It's what we teach at Singularity University. It's what we promote and we focus on at XPRIZE.
Oh, I
Great,
really
thank you,
appreciate
Kevin.
that, Peter. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Stay optimistic. I'm not going to put in my personal comments about your views on the news media, Peter. I will say that some news organizations are curated more intelligently than others, and I would say we're one of them. We have time for one last viewer, questioner named Aaron Tiffany from one of the WSJ Startup of the Year contenders, ID Me. Hey, Aaron.
Hey, how you guys doing? Peter, thanks a lot for taking the time. So my question is, you're obviously been passionate about space since a very young age, and I want to know how you were able to take that passion into a hugely capital-intensive industry that had been dominated by federal governments and turn that into one where the private sector is innovating to reduce costs and to promote wider scale accessibility as you guys move towards profitability and future space travel and projects like that.
So Aaron, it's a great question, and I'll give you a couple elements which I think are applicable to anybody who wants to take on a big, hairy project that has typically been in the realm of government or large industry. And I'll tell you, it fundamentally comes from my passion. It comes from me being connected to wanting to make a difference in that world. And I have two main passions. One is, well, maybe three. It's, space was first, grand challenges, a second, and then the third is the use of technology to enable entrepreneurs to do big and bold things. And those are the three things that I focus my life on through my companies, my organizations. And because I was passionate about it, what happened? Number one, that passion flows out of me and people get it. And I think people are attracted towards passion. And so people who saw me accomplish incrementally larger and larger achievements with that passion started to believe the trajectory of where I was going to go. The second thing is it allowed me to find great people out there in the world like Chris Lewicki and Eric Anderson, Bob Richards, Todd Hawley, other individuals to work with who share that passion with me. The third thing is, because of that passion, when things did not happen in the space world, when NASA didn't go back to the moon or go to Mars or drive forward in different visions they had, that drove a massive frustration in me. And that frustration just caused me to drive harder. I will say, it's no cakewalk, right? Zero Gravity Corporation, which I co-founded back in 1993, I was a CEO of. It took 11 years before we earned our first revenue dollar. It was an 11-year startup. And I did not give up on getting Zero G going because it was my purpose and mission. And I was fueled by that passion and by that frustration. XPRIZE was conceived of in 1994. It was not awarded until 2004, 10 years. So if I had not been crazy or passionate, I would have given up far, far earlier than it would have taken.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question.
I want to wrap up, and I was actually going to ask you about you and space, and I'm wondering if we can just get a little, if you'd mind being a little introspective. So you had periods of your life where it was difficult. Probably people thought you were a bit nuts. Maybe during your college and post-college years, or
They still do.
maybe. Well, I mean, now there's a real groundswell. I mean, more than a groundswell of. I mean, there's investment and planning for all sorts of space-related endeavors. Are you one of these lucky people who, even in the early days, somehow didn't mind the skeptics and the doubters, or did it bother you early on that people, really didn't believe at that point?
So that's a great question. If I think back honestly, I surrounded myself with people who did believe. And again, what I said before about the community you have in your life and who's with you, I didn't surround myself with yes men and women, but people who were passionate by that vision. And what I teach is a lot of the notion that that disruptive breakthroughs typically have a long period of deceptive, slow growth. So, Chuck Hall, who founded 3D Systems back 30 years ago, the first 3D printing technologies, had this vision of where 3D printing was going to go. And it's taken 30 years to get there, but now it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. AI, the same thing. All of these things, the visionary sees where it can go and has to stick with it. And it's a matter of your conviction. So if you have conviction and on the passion and are willing to stick with it, you may be too early, in which case you have to just slug it out, or you may have timed it properly. But those people who didn't get it, I just said, don't get it, and that's fine. I did. I was confident. I had people that I respected who did get it, and who, one person, Gerard K. O'Neill, one of the founders in this arena, Arthur C. Clarke, didn't live to see where it's gotten to now, but they knew it was going there, and their conviction and their support supported me. So, again, I'll say, and perhaps end on this note, that we're living in a day and time where any bold dream can be made to happen. The technologies, exponentially growing technologies, exponential organizational tools that we teach at SU, that I'm going to be teaching at the Abundance 360 Summit, that we use at XPRIZE Foundation, all of these things are enabling individuals to make their biggest, boldest dreams come true on timescales like never before. So it's a matter of finding that thing which you're most passionate about, that you're going to stick to, that you're going to pull a team around what my friend Salim calls a massively transformative purpose, right? If you have an MTP and you can use these technologies on it, you can change the world and you can make your dreams come true, and don't let anyone tell you you can't.
Thank you, Peter. Words to remember and cherish and really live out. So everybody, I'm going to wrap up by saying thank you to Peter. Thank you to our viewers, our chatters, our listeners. We even have some young, school-age people out there who are watching, which is great. WSJ Startup of the Year, for which Peter and others are mentors. And we have 20 startups, and we're going to be whittling them down to one by November. We're reachable at wsj.com/SOTY, that's SOTY. I want to thank Juhi Desai, who's my colleague at the Journal, who's the producer and who has put everybody on air and got us all set up. On Wednesday, we're going to have another Spreecast live chat with Dr. Dean Ornish, and he'll talk about all the interesting things he's doing in health and medical science. So that's it. Thank you again, Peter. Great talking with you, and have a great rest of the week, everybody.